Hello, my icebergs. Thank you for clicking on the thumbnail and welcome to the Iceberg Show with Saurabh Puranik, a place to find your inspiration. Please wait, I want to save your time. So check the description box and see the interesting questions I ask in this interview. You can watch those questions that solve your problem, or you can watch those questions that will give you a different perspective in life. So, guys, spend some time to save your time. Let's grow together. Today, we will meet the Indian Army veteran, an entrepreneur, and firm believer of ethics and integrity, who served in the Western sector during Operation Parakram and Operation Rakshak in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. He is an alumnus of Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. He is a founder of Talent North, a full-service talent advisory firm. In this episode, he shared his iceberg story, combat lessons, and mental toughness, etc., which will take you one step closer to your goal. So let's meet Major Praful Nangia. Enjoy this episode and comment your learning. Let's grow together. Thank you, Praful sir, for joining my journey, and I welcome you on the Iceberg Show with Saurabh Puranik.
Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you for inviting me to the Iceberg Show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so let's begin this episode with your iceberg story. That is, what things you worked on in the background. And so you are a second generation officer. So it's naturally that there is a love for Indian Army. But I would like to ask you that you chose NDA, not OTA, because that shows your focus and determination for the Army. So what was your motivation behind joining the Indian Army apart from your family?
Okay, all right. So, Saurabh, I've spent all my life in cantonments. Wherever my father went and whenever we had an opportunity to be with him. So, you kind of followed him and stayed in small towns, small cantonments. From that point of view, I think it was very clear that maybe this is what I want to do. Plus, I was very sure that I did not have the aptitude to be a doctor or an engineer. And in those days, if you're from a small town, I think there were very limited options after school as to what professional courses are available. So the choices were limited. You could go to the Merchant Navy, you could go to NDA, you could do hotel management, or you become a doctor or an engineer. From that point of view, it was easy to say that, okay, maybe I should focus on NDA and then see how it goes. So that is how the decision was taken.
Okay, but sir, what did you learn about yourself while joining the Indian Army and also the NDA? Because in that age, we are just teenager and we are not like focused about all these things. So what did you learn about yourself?
I started learning much before I went. When I went for my SSB and after that the medicals, one of the things that the doctors identified was wrong with me was that I was overweight. So I was about 16 kgs overweight, and which meant that they gave you 21 days and you were supposed to go back for a re-medical. My father told me one thing very clearly. He says, I'm not going to waste money. If you can reduce weight and show it to me before, only then I will book a ticket for you. And so, those 16, 17 days to lose 16 kgs was crazy. And what I realized was that if you're focused, then anything is possible. You can do it. So I could not drop the full 16. I dropped 14 kgs, and then he said, okay, at least you've shown me that you can do this, so I will book your ticket. And that is how I went for my re-medical.
Okay, but like this is about the NDA, but after joining the army, because after clearing your course, that is in the India, I think that is around 3 years of course, if I'm not wrong. So, but then you joined the Indian Army, and right. What you discovered about yourself, because you did like professional course, I would say, and then you actually go into the field. So there, what was your realization?
Okay, I'll break it down into two parts. First is, I think, the learning from the academy itself, and NDA is not an easy place. It's quite tough. We're just out of school first time. A lot of us are moving out of homes for the first time, so it takes a little while to settle down. What I realized was that while everything else is going on around you, I think it's your mental strength which carries the day. So from what I learned from the academy, and there's this saying that everybody keeps talking about it in the academy, all across all academies, is that it is all mental. And if you're not defeated mentally, then you're still fighting, and your body will follow what your brain tells your body to do. So that was my learning from NDA, that it's all mental, nothing else. Thereafter, after I got commissioned and when I went to my unit, there the learnings were very different. And what I realized was that if your men are willing to follow you, they trust you, then they will also do anything you want from them, right? And which means that you need to look after people under you, otherwise they will never listen to you, they will never respect you. The last thing that I learned was that ethics and integrity are extremely important. You have soldiers coming from different walks of life. They may not be as educated as the officers, which is changing now. Now you're getting fairly educated people joining as soldiers as well. But they are not idiots. They can see through a person. They can figure out whether the individual is honest and upright or not. So that was my learning, to say that anything else we'll figure it out, but anywhere, wherever ethics and integrity are involved, there can be no negotiations. It is either black or white. There are no grays here.
That's true, sir. But how did your this army experience affect your life after leaving the army? Because that transition it's a bit difficult for these people, for people like you who joined the army, and that was a rigorous training and rigorous experience, I would say. So how this experience or learnings help you to cope up with I would not say to cope up, but to bridge that gap?
Okay, all right. Let me give you a background about what really happened. So I had no intentions of leaving. I was very happy with what I was doing. I was doing a course, which was I opted for Army Aviation, and there was this course going on at the Basic Flying Training School. I met with an accident. I was in and out of hospital for about 1 year. And after that, I realized that, my arm, I broke my right arm. It was pretty badly messed up. I realized that there was no fun in sitting behind a desk. The organization on its part did the right thing. They would give you sheltered appointments, sit behind a desk, do paperwork. But I don't think that's what I wanted to do. So that got me thinking that maybe I can do something else, and it is not something that came out of the blue. It took some time to convince myself that can I do something else firstly, because I had not seen anything else out there. I'd never seen a big city. Maybe I would come to Delhi once in a while on my vacations, but that's about it. And so it took a little while to believe that you can do something. I think that accident and the time it took to get myself back on track physically taught me a few things. One is that if life closes one door, it also gives you multiple options in terms of different doors and windows, and it is your choice what you open, right? And it is not the end of the world. I mean, there are failures, but there are no permanent failures. I would rather call them setbacks. They're only setbacks. They're no permanent failures. The second is, I think it is just a lot of confidence and self-belief which is needed, because you're walking into an unfamiliar terrain, and you need to be prepared for anything and everything, which also means that you need to be willing to learn and unlearn. What was the way to live life in your previous in that organization may not be the right way going forward. And so you have to let go of certain things. You have to relearn, unlearn, and relearn, and it's a constant process even today. It continues. Another thing I learned was it was so easy to just kind of forget yourself and start thinking, how did this accident happen? Why did I do this? Why did I not do that? Right? And it's so easy to get swallowed into that whole, I would say that, that hurricane of self-pity. So I think one big learning is that if anything goes wrong, there is no point going over it again and again. You just learn your lessons and you move on. Don't get stuck doing a post-mortem as to why this happened and why that did not happen. All right, it happened. Shit happens. You learn and you move on. Right? Make sure you don't put yourself in such a situation again. That's it.
That's very true, sir, because we also like stuck in the victim mindset when something goes wrong with us. But sir, you saw multiple deployments that you like went to Western sector, then you went to the Jammu and Kashmir. So how did they differ from each other, and how you quickly established a credibility within the team? Because you previously spoke that you have to build credibility with your team, because then and then only they can follow you, and they can follow any order, and they can do anything for you. So how you quickly establish that credibility within the team?
Okay. All right. Yes, I saw a mix. I saw a mix of the conventional and the unconventional. Conventional was during Operation Parakram. That was after the Parliament attack and the Indian Army was mobilized. So there we were primed for a conventional role. The war never happened, and after that everybody went back. We went to J&K from there, and in J&K it was a very different situation. It was a hybrid war. You did not know who the enemy was. It is not easy to identify a terrorist. They don't wear a uniform. They have no rules. It can be anybody walking on the street. So there, I think one thing I learned was that you need to adapt and you need to learn. You need to keep your eyes open, which means that you need to think through. You need to plan accordingly, and gear yourself up for that situation, right? So if, for example, in a conventional war, you're talking in terms of facing, say in that case, it was the Pakistan army, right? But here, when you're facing these cowardly terrorists, then the only way to do it is you need to start thinking like them. What can they do? What would they be doing? And where will this person come from? What can he or she do? And how do you adapt to that? So it was more of that. It was more of I would say, being very aware of your surroundings, and learning from people around you. There are other units around. You learn a lot from people who've already been there. Right? In my case, I was lucky. My unit had gone through a tenure in J&K earlier, so there was some learning. Some old timers were still around, so they knew a little bit. But of course, things had changed drastically in between. But then the only thing is, you just need to be confident of yourself and your men. Coming to your point about credibility, look, like I said, these boys are very smart, and the only way you can kind of build that credibility with them is, firstly, in my case, I was lucky because I'd spent 3 years in the unit till then, so they knew me. They knew me inside out, so it was easy. But still, at the same time, you need to. They always keep looking at your behavior, right? Your actions, and whatever you do has to be above reproach. Nobody can question why you did this and what you did. Nobody should be talking behind your back. Ki, "Uss aapne aisa kar diya and ye nahi karna chahiye tha," right? So, one is you need to be neutral. You need to be very civil when talking with them. They understand logic. Everybody understands logic, right? There's no point losing your temper, losing your cool. It's just like having a conversation. And making sure that you have the solution to any problem that they may have. Now, that problem may be from an operational perspective. It may be something happening on this man's home front. Wife is not well, parents are not well. In some cases, there is some land dispute going on and he needs some help. You need to take out that time. And how you can do it is by making sure that you know each and every person inside out, right? So you are supposed to, as an officer, you're supposed to know the date of birth, anniversaries, name of the spouse, name of the children, where is this individual from, by heart. And of course, you keep in touch. There are a lot of options, or I would say a lot of avenues for informal conversations. Just go have a cup of tea with them, have a meal with them once in a while, right? If nothing else, have a cup of chai with them. Go to the langar, find out what's going on. Make sure that they get everything that they're authorized. The army, of course, makes sure that you're supposed to get 3 meals a day. This is what it is supposed to be. this is the quality of what you're supposed to get. Now, as an officer, your first task is to make sure that, firstly, as per authorization, they get everything that is on paper, right? And secondly, the quality is ensured. Because, I mean, no army works on an empty stomach, right? And these are small things, you know. I mean, do your men have a mattress to sleep or not? Do they have a heating arrangement in their accommodation or not? Do they get hot water to have a bath? Not simple things. They don't cost much, but if you take care of that, then they know कि हाँ ये साहब जो है हमारा देखभाल करेगा. So then it becomes easy. Second, I think, is being approachable. You know, it's so easy to lock yourself up that, oh, I'm the officer, I'm going to sit in the office and everybody, you know, you come in only when I call you. You have to be approachable. They should be able to come to you. You can't always keep going to them, keep, you know, tell me what is the problem with you, right? But if you're approachable, you get to know a lot of things. You can do a lot of good for them.
Okay, so that means like there should not be a barrier between you and your team, and you should be empathetic towards them, and you should take care about your men. So I think these are the things, major things we should think to.
You know, you're right. I mean, you can't be empathetic all the time. You know, that sometimes there are operational requirements, right? So empathy doesn't work. But then, whatever the yardstick, then it has to be neutral for everybody. You can't be playing favorites. That, okay, you know, just because I like this guy, I will do something extra for him. I will not do it for anybody else.
Okay.
And they can see through you. You know, it's a very small world out there.
That's true, sir. Sir, can you please tell us about a time where you had to deal with your inner conflict on the job, and you talk about your accident which happened. So before that, have you dealt with your inner conflict?
Yes, I did. There were certain instances wherein I felt that this is not the right way to do things, right? And there were two options. One is you just keep quiet and go with the flow. मेरी जेब से कुछ नहीं जा रहा है. Why should I bother? The second is you should have the courage of conviction to stand up and tell whoever it is that you're wrong. This is not the way it is supposed to be, and this is the rule book. This is how things need to be done, right? Again, one thing comes out. It's all about integrity. You know? I mean, integrity can have various means. It is not just about saying that are you stealing money or not. Integrity can be to so many things, right? Integrity towards your people, integrity towards your profession, so many things. So yes, I did face this thing wherein I had two options. I could just keep quiet, or the second option was to say, sorry, I don't accept this, and I don't think this is right, and this is why I don't think it is right. So once you do that, you go to bed happy that you've done your job. And as a young officer, it doesn't matter to junior in service for it to ever affect you. So speak your mind. And that's what I learned very quickly.
Okay. But sir, was there any person who had an impact on your life during your career? And can you share that story? What was that event that make an impact on your life?
Yes, firstly, my parents. You know, my father retired as a colonel. He's commanded to unit. The unit I got commissioned to, he commanded that unit. So the men had seen me as a kid running around in shorts, and then they saw me as an officer. So I've seen how they've dealt with situations, how they would conduct themselves, and how they would treat everybody with a lot of respect and compassion. And like I said, they were always approachable. So those are things that I saw as growing up as a child. And of course, you know, so yes, a lot of values which are imbibed in being by my parents. I think yes, that really holds me, I would say, in good stead even today. The second is, you know, there was this brigade commander. Some mess up happened somewhere on a Sunday, and I was called to his office. I was a captain that time, and I went to his office on a Sunday, and he asked me. He said, "Sit down." He didn't even tell me to sit down. He was quite angry, and basically after all the bullshitting was over, then he asked me one simple question. He asked me, "What have you achieved in life?" So I thought he's being sarcastic, and I said, "Excuse me, sir." He said, "No, tell me what have you achieved in life." So I thought the best thing to do is just keep quiet. You just forget about it and I'll get out of there. But he kept insisting. So I said, sir, after 12th, I went to India. He said, yeah, that is because your parents paid their school fees, paid your school fees. They made sure you're educated, so you passed an exam and you went. What else did you do? I said, sir, okay, I passed out of the academy. He said, yeah, that's the academy's problem, right? Once you get inside, it is their job to make sure that you pass out also. And so anyway, it's continued like that. And basically, at the end of that conversation, I realized that I started thinking that what have I really achieved in life, right? Because everything you can give credit to somebody. Okay, my parents did this, my instructor did this, my boss did this, but what have you really achieved on your own? And that is a question I still deal with on a daily basis when I think about it. That okay, what is it that I have achieved in life? I think that keeps me very balanced. To say that yeah, probably I've not reached there as yet. There's a many miles yet to go.
Okay, so that's a really thought-provoking question. It is said that like armed forces officers are fearless and they are just brave people and like something like that. So, but what I feel is that knowing your weaknesses is the best way to become a brave in our life. Okay, so what was your greatest fear and how you overcome that?
Look, everybody has fears, right? I think if somebody says that they're not scared of anything, they're lying. Everybody is scared. I don't think I ever had any real fear. It was more of saying, ki, all right, kya hoga? Zyada se zyada kya hoga? Let's just do it. That wasn't the fear, but yes, I'm extremely scared of snakes, even now. I recall this incident. We were in the desert and there was 4-5 of us were standing in a group, and there was this officer. He had just come back from the commandos post, and he was telling us stories about what happened in commandos. They taught them how to catch snakes, etc., etc. And there was this Russell Viper which happened to be there, and he said, "Oh, this is a Russell Viper," and he was trying to impress us with his knowledge that if you stamp your foot here, it's going to run there, and this is how much it can jump, and because Russell Viper typically bites you on the face, right? They jump, and so it was dusk, and there was a torch focused on the Russell Viper, and we were all standing at a safe distance but observing all this drama. Suddenly the torch went out, so it just stopped, and it was pitch dark, and all of us were jumping around because nobody knew where the snake is, and everybody was scared. So yes, fear is always there. I think my biggest fear was moving out of my comfort zone. You were so used to a way of life that it becomes very difficult to do something any other way. And how you deal with that situation is you withdraw, you stay within yourself. So making sure that you put yourself out of that comfort zone, do things which you don't like to do, right? Or do it the way you don't like to do. I think that takes a lot of courage. So that I think has been my biggest learning. It's all right. I mean, they can be a different way of doing things, even if it is not the way you do it.
Okay, but sir, how to stop being controlled by fear and failure? Because everyone that particular thought limits us to achieve our goals. So how to stop ourselves being controlled by this fear and failure thoughts?
One is you need to stop thinking, right? We kind of overanalyze the decision matrix to say, okay, if I do this, this is what is going to happen. I think the best way to, and you have that fear only when you're not taking decisions. The first thing is you need to learn to take a decision, which is not easy. And at least my personal experiences, we are always happy to rely on others to take decisions for us. And at some stage, you have a conversation with your parents when you're young, and you say, all right, you decide for me. Right? And so that at least tomorrow something goes wrong, I can blame my parents ki aapne bola tha. That is how this happened, right? Taking decisions is not easy because that also means that you need to learn to live with the results of your decisions. But I think that's where it starts, right? You learn from your decisions. Okay, probably this is the wrong decision. Maybe I will never do it again the next time. and slowly, I would say the level of success in taking the right decisions increases because you learn from your own mistakes. I have this very interesting thing. So army, actually the Indian army, it's a zero error syndrome. Nobody wants to see anything going wrong. And I had this boss, and he was very interesting, a very different person. And he said that, look, if you're young now, if you don't take decisions now, when will you learn how to take decisions? You can't be learning to take decisions at my age. And as long as that decision is not killing anybody, go ahead and take the decision. Jada se jada kya hoga, right? So just go ahead and take the decision. You will learn. The second thing linked to this is that, look, failure is temporary. You may take a wrong decision, it doesn't work out. Sure, it doesn't work out. It's like you're running, you fall down. What do? You pick yourself up, you dust your hands, and you move on, right? It's the same thing.
Yes, but sir, what steps one should take to achieve that? To take the decisions, because every day we should do something, practice in our daily life to improve our decision making skills, and it's not a like one day job, because you just like taking decisions about your career, taking decisions about your life, or taking decisions about, for that matter, for like marrying a spouse or marrying a girl or boy. So this something needs to be like taken care daily, I would say. And what steps one should take to improve those decision making skills? Because like I can give my example, because just watching a TV, like people we have a bunch of apps here like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and they have bunch of movies, and we cannot decide actually what movie I should watch or what things I should watch, because these are the daily practices. And there should be, or there might be some sort of frameworks or steps one can improve in their life. So can you please talk us about those steps?
All right. So now that you're talking about Netflix, I don't know if you have noticed, but Netflix has come up with a feature saying play something, right? It's just basically saying that, okay, Netflix, you decide for me because I can't take a decision. And we are happy to let Netflix decide. Look, I follow a simple structure to decide. I don't spend too much time trying to figure out ye galat hai, sahi hai. I just look at it to say, okay, if this is what I need to do, what is the worst case scenario? And am I willing to live with the worst case scenario of my decision? If yes, I will go ahead and take the decision. Right? And I can give you examples of saying that, when I started Talent North, the whole idea was that, okay, you have a fairly cushy job. There's a big brand behind you. There are a lot of other people, a lot of perks which will come with working with a big firm. What are you going to do alone on your own? And when I looked at it, I said, okay, worst case scenario kya hoga? Maybe 2 years down the line, I will go and find a job for myself, right? So that was the worst case scenario. And so therefore the decision making was very simple. The second is, we try to overanalyze our decisions. One thing I've learned in life, and it's imbibed in you in the academy, is that the first reaction is always the best reaction. After that, if you start over-analyzing and overdosing your instinct with logic, that's where things go wrong.
Okay.
Your brain is designed in a way that it will take the right decision most of the times.
Okay. So, sir, you talk about mental toughness. So, how someone can become mentally tough like an armed forces officer, and what are the stages of mental toughness?
All right. Look, the training is such sort of that it breaks you down physically and mentally, right? And it reaches a stage wherein you're just surviving. It is just about survival. 2 hours, 3 hours, okay, maybe through the night until next day morning. What that does is that it prepares your mind slowly over a period of time to say, all right, I've been in such bad physical state, right? And nothing can be worse than this. I mean, if you spend 2 nights out on a mountain in a trench filled with water, there can be nothing worse than that, right? I mean, you're chilled to the bone. And if you've done it and survived, there are a lot of learnings from these situations, right? To say that, okay, if tomorrow there is a setback. I won't use the word failure. There is a setback. How do you deal with it? And you go back into your mind to say, okay, you know, that time in that situation, I had this setback and this is what I did, right? To say that, okay, I mean, in my case, I say that, you know, in the academy, I had a small accident. I had dislocated my shoulder. And in a lot of instances, I go back to, I put my mind back there that, all right, I was literally down in the dumps. How did I come out of it? How did I come out of it? There was a lot of hard work. It was focused and dedicated hard work wherein you were very clear that this is what you need to achieve. And then, of course, you also know that if mentally you are willing to take a decision, your body will support you. So the first way, you can't toughen just the mind, you have to toughen the body. The mind will toughen as a result of that. As in how you keep pushing your body, your mind becomes tough.
Okay. So, but sir, like you might have faced the combat during your tenure. So, what combat lesson you learned that can apply to the civilian world also? What are those like lessons, like general lessons you could talk about?
All right. The first thing I will say to this is that you should be an expert at what you do. You should excel at it, right? And I relate this back to the first instance when I was put in, wherein there were live bullets flying around. You knew there is danger out there, but suddenly you realize that your mind is not working. You're mechanically doing things, which basically happens because the training takes over. You stop thinking, you stop analyzing, you start doing things mechanically like a robot. Okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I realized it afterwards that, you know, why did I behave like this? And realized that it wasn't me. It was just the training which suddenly took over, which meant that you need to know your trade. I'm calling it trade. It could be a profession. It could be a skill. If you know that, then everything else becomes so easy, right? For you're a cybersecurity expert, right? If you know what your profession, your job, I don't think you're struggling there on a day-to-day basis, right? It's hygiene. You know it, and therefore that pushes you to say, okay, look, I know this particular aspect. What more can I do? Because this is basic hygiene, right? I mean, so I'm a headhunter, right? So if I look at a job description which comes in, now there's certain things which are expected to be basic hygiene. You're hiring an investment banker. Financial modeling is basic hygiene, right? I should not be testing that person on financial modeling. You tell me more.
Correct.
And that comes from your expertise in what you do. The second is, I think, you know, and I'll expand that, not really combat lessons, but okay, these are combat lessons as well. That look, reputations are very, very hard to make, but they're very easy to break. One wrong decision, one wrong, I would say, one wrong expression can spoil your reputation forever. You know, your body language can give it away, right? So be very clear that you need to maintain and protect your reputation at all costs, which will come from, again, two things, right? One is, of course, like I said, your expertise, your skill. The second is, are you a man of your word or not? Right? I mean, again, integrity, right? In a normal work basis, it is like saying, okay, there is this assignment. Saurabh, by when can you commit it? And Saurabh comes and tells me, Praful, I will do it by Wednesday, right? But if Saurabh doesn't do it by Wednesday, Saurabh has not lived up to his word, right? Either don't commit. You say, okay, I will try and do it maybe by Friday, but I don't know, right? But if you've committed, then you have to live to it. Otherwise, you lose the trust of the other person. One more thing is the willingness to learn and get your hands dirty. You know, we all love to manage people. Everybody aspires that, okay, I have 2 people under me, I managed a team of 10 people. But the whole idea is, are you willing to do it yourself, or are you just the manager, danda marke, okay, you know, you need to do this and you need to do that, right? I think one thing which the army teaches you is that you cannot know everything, and there should be no shame in asking. You know, all courses, wherever you go, even in the unit, some equipment, the men know it better because they've been doing it for donkey's years. They've been manning that equipment. And they are the ones who teach you, they are the instructors, right? So they will obviously know it better. But you should not feel, oh, but I am senior, how can I go and ask them, or how can I say I don't know how to do this? Be willing to ask, be willing to learn. And that is a big barrier in a lot of people. They're not able to accept. They feel embarrassed that how can I say I don't know how to do this. And the third is to say, look, I mean, if you don't know it, just say you don't know it. Yeah? I mean, what's the point in bluffing, hiding behind something, making excuses? You either know it or you don't know it. As simple as that. Another thing is that, as a leader, and even in combat situations, I think what you learn is that success always belongs to the team, right? But failure is only the leaders. You can't say, oh, but he or she did not do it. She took a holiday off on Saturday. That's how this project has not been completed. Come on, man, you're the leader, right? So don't pass the buck. I mean, you need to have ownership for your job and your actions. It's very simple when in word, but very hard to practice.
Okay, so that's true, sir. Like, actually, we should be responsible for every situation which we face, and that's the thing we are missing right now, because people are not responsible, and they are just blaming each other, and people need to be responsible for that. I guess that's a basic thing one should have in their career or have in their life.
Yes, there's this very interesting saying in the army, at least, that the bamboo always comes from the top, and the thickness of the bamboo keeps increasing as it keeps going down, right? But some leader somewhere has to just absorb all of it and not pass it down.
That's true, sir. So my next question is that what Indian Army taught you about unpredictable situation and or unpredictable change within your life, or as well as in the business, because that's something is like no one is prepared about, but we can plan those, or we can anticipate those changes in our life. So what was your learning about these unpredictable changes?
Unpredictable changes. Okay, the first is, look, I mean, one thing I learned was that you should plan, always plan. There's plan diligently, cater for contingencies, have backup plans for something that may come up, because the first thing which jumps out of the window, when the first bullet is fired, is the plan itself, right? So while you may plan, it'll never go according to the script. The second is, you need to, like I said, you need to trust your instincts. First reaction is always the right reaction. Don't waste time trying to overanalyze. The third is, never lose sight of the big picture. We get so bogged down by certain day-to-day routine, monotonous activities that we just forget to look at the big picture. And that's what, whether it's in business, in profession, in job, that's what you need to be focused on, right? One more thing I think is very important is willingness and the ability to adapt. As you start doing something, you become very rigid in your thought and action. I think what I've learned is, be open to suggestions. You may have decided what you have to do, but be open to suggestions, because once in a while you will come across a suggestion which will improve your original thought of action, right? And you can't just be close to that idea. So listen to everybody. If you feel there is value, accept it. Otherwise, do what you feel is the right thing to do. Another thing is, you should have an opinion. A lot of us go through life without ever having an opinion only. Okay, aap keh rahe ho, theek hai, okay, if it's okay with you, it's okay with me, right? Have an opinion and have the courage to voice your opinion. But at the same time, be careful that you should not get rigid. Don't come across as somebody who's a dheet, in a sense that you can say anything to that person, he or she is not going to change their mind on it, right? If somebody is explaining something to you with logic and you find that logic appealable, then accept it, but have an opinion. Because otherwise what happens is you don't have an opinion. Tomorrow when things go wrong, you'll be the first person saying, hey, see, I already knew it that this is going to go wrong.
That's correct, sir. Sir, you studied and worked with the best mind, be it NDA, ISB, Army, and MDI Gurgaon. So, what are the common qualities between these people, and what qualities are required to leave our comfort zone? Because you left your comfort zone, that is the reason you lost your weight within that period in the span of 16 days. So, what are the qualities are required to leave our comfort zone?
All right. Look, one is a fact of life, and statistics will bear me out, is that you win some, you lose some. Right? You cannot always win, but of course you should win the critical battles, and that's something which you should be comfortable with. And you know what I realized about people who excel, whether it's in the army or outside, is that they are extremely passionate about what they do, and they are very good at execution. The second is they are also smart enough to quickly identify and accept that, okay, these are things they cannot do it themselves because they don't have the skills. There is no point for me to start learning how to, so if I have to get a website created, there's no point I do it. Can I do it? Yes. Is it worth it? No. Right? So it's exactly like that. So you need to identify what you're good at and what you're not, and what you're not, then you need somebody to do it for you. The third thing, which is very common, is how do they prioritize things? Like I said, the big picture. You should know. I mean, as a rule, do it first thing in the morning or last thing at night to say, okay, what is the priority for the next day? What is it that you're going to achieve? Right? And that's how you go about it, because there will be certain mundane things and you will realize that you spent half a day just doing some silly MIS filling, which could have been done maybe over the weekend, if nothing else, right? Where there were bigger issues at hand. Another thing is that you should know your profession. And I tell you one thing, what I've realized is that you might say that, okay, promoters, for example, right? The promoters are like this, promoters are like that. But I've realized that a promoter knows his industry or his product better than the professional. You talk about any industrialist, they will know their business better than the CEO that they hire. Which is because they're really passionate. They treat it like a baby. It doesn't look like work for them. And why that happens again is because they have the skill which is needed, right? So it again comes back to saying, do you know what you do? Do you know everything that is to be known about your particular profession? And if you do, then you don't need to waste time or energy focusing on how to deliver on your basics. Then you can add more value. And one last thing, which is of course the willingness to learn and the willingness to say, okay, or accept that or the openness to accept that I don't know this. There's no shame in saying I don't know it, but I'm willing to learn.
But sir, like people often talk about that, how to create a great team, and people generally take only those within the team who have they're like-minded people. But I would say that will not create a good team. So what is, according to you, what characteristics or character are required to build a great team for any organization or for any task, I would say?
All right. Look, it's a myth. If somebody believes that if you get all 90th percentile people and you staff them, and that's your team, all top performers on the extreme right of the bell curve, and you'll have an amazing team. It's a misnomer. It doesn't work like that. And one simple, if you follow movies, I don't know if you've seen Moneyball. That's a real life example, right? They were all 60th, 50th percentile in terms of ability, but as a team that they delivered. The trick is again sort of about how do you carry the team along. You can't, if you have all star performers in your team, even then they will not deliver if you can't make sure that they're focused and directed well, right? They need to be focused on the task at hand. They need to be all looking in the right direction. And so therefore you need average performers. You of course need a few good performers. And the thumb of rule is 20% of people in an organization carry 80% of the weight of the organization. That's a thumb rule and we should accept it.
Okay. So have you any have any personal experience that help you to become a good leader? Because so there may be some instances that you have to deal with some people that are not listening to you. But so what are your personal experience that help you to become a good leader?
You should know your people well, Saurabh. Again, there is no one size fits all. You need to adapt. So, for example, there might be somebody who is very soft spoken, and you don't need to even raise your voice with them, right? But you can convey things very subtly. So every individual, as a leader, you should know how to deal with whom and at what time, right? Okay. And the second thing is, as a leader, you also need to understand how much can you push an individual. You need to know when to back off. The second is, I think what I personally feel is that the integrity of the leader percolates to everything. The team sees it. People might be working on their workstations, but they are keeping an eye on the team leader as well as to what is the team leader doing, right? As a team leader, you also need to be able to identify what are the strengths and weaknesses of each person in your team, who's best suited for what task. And the second is you need to have I don't know whether I should give this example or not. Sometimes how you behave with a person will also depend on what's, say for example, what's the background of that individual, right? If for example you're dealing with somebody from, say, the northern states and the person is very hot-headed, there is no point getting angry with that individual because they will then not do it. Ego comes into the way. But there are better ways of making sure that the individual works, right? So you need to identify what works with whom and then do it. It just cannot be, you can't be throwing the rule book all the time. At the same time, maybe sometimes there is a genuine reason why an individual is not being able to deliver, and you should be able to catch it very quickly. Something is wrong, right? And look, we are all human beings. There are red flags which show up in every team meeting. You know that person is not in the right frame of mind. Why? Is the person not happy with the job? Is the person interviewing somewhere else? Is he about to, jump ship? Whatever, right? Or is there something wrong at home? The person is not comfortable. And as a leader, you need to know what's going on. So you have to be sensitive enough to identify and pick up these subtle signals that people around you give out.
Okay. So my last question is that what is something you think that everyone should try in their life at least once in their life? So what are those things you would recommend to people that they should at least experience once in their life?
All right. I think one is push yourself physically. Build your mental strength, and as the body responds, your mind will grow stronger. The second is, I would encourage everyone to make a list of things that they're not comfortable with, right? You don't like to read books, maybe make a list of the top 10 books that you will never read in your life, and then force yourself to read those books. You don't like crowds. I don't like going to malls, right? Because I'm very uncomfortable to too many people around. But I force myself to do it once in a while. It is important. Not in this environment, of course. This is pre-corona. You are very uncomfortable making small talk with people. Make it a point to pick up a conversation with co-passengers, taxi drivers, your panwala. Have a chat. Find out what's going on. I tell my nephew, he's a 6-year-old, very picky about food. And I always tell him one thing, that anything you give him and he says, no, I don't eat it. So I asked him one question. I said, have you tried this earlier? He said no. And I told him, I said, if you've not tried it, how can you say you don't like it? Take a bite, then you tell me you don't like it, I will believe you. So that's the way I think one should look at life. You should try everything before saying that you don't like it.
Okay. So, like, does that mean that documenting our life will help us to to live in a structured way, or to live in a more focused way?
I don't believe in documentation. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that, for example, all right, have you written a book, Saurabh, as yet?
Yes, I'm. I'm
You
doing that.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, then let's talk about something else. It could be anything. It's like saying that I have a lot of things which I don't like to do, but I force myself to do it. For example, I'm not very experimental with food. I like a certain set cuisine, and I eat only that, right? But I force myself once in a while to order something which I don't like, or which I think I don't like. It could be like saying that, okay, you sometimes reach a stage in life wherein you want everything very planned. That, okay, I'm going to go on holiday, I'm going to leave on this date, I'm going to stay in this hotel. Sometimes just pick up the car and get out of the city. We'll see. I've done a trip with my son. We had 3 days off. We traveled 1.5 days, and we came back. There was no destination in mind. It was just time. 1.5 days you can travel.
Okay. So my last question is little bit personal. So what you like about this show, and what encourages you to be on this show, and what you like about this particular The Iceberg Show?
So when we spoke, Saurabh, I think what you told me that the whole objective of the Iceberg Show is actually to motivate the youth, show them or showcase different aspects. I think that was very appealing. There's a lot of clutter around, but this is very focused. You are trying to do some good to somebody, and personally, I feel that you learn from others' experiences. And I think what you're doing is creating very concise, given the attention span of people around today, to say it's a very concise nugget of experiences. I wouldn't say advice or anything. It is just experiences, and let people at least listen to this, and maybe they can draw some learnings from this. I will like to add one thing. It just triggered a thought. Experiences, right? So when I got commissioned, a lot of people in my family they were in the armed forces, and one of my uncles, retired Colonel Saab, he called me for a drink. He said, okay, you've gotten commissioned, come have a drink with me. So I went to his house in the evening, and we sat down and he started asking questions. Okay, so when you go to the unit, so I was in artillery, so we have batteries, like the sub-units are called batteries. So he said, okay, so how many men in a battery? I said, uncle, 120 men. So he said, okay, how many men in the regiment? I said, 400 men. So he said, that's huge. So are you excited? I said, yeah, of course I am. But he said, okay, good, that's good. But while you have 400 men around you, and that you will one day be leading, but never forget that there are also 800 eyes and 800 ears watching and listening to everything that you do. So don't ever put yourself in a situation wherein you don't live up to the ideals of your family, of your unit, and always keep it in mind that somebody is always listening and watching you. It just triggered, so I thought I should share.
No, sir, that's really a great advice, and that is where coming back to the integrity part, which you really emphasis on that. So that's a great learning, and I would thank you for helping me to uncover your life stories and your experiences. So I'm really thankful for that, and I wish that you could spread more positivity on this show. So I'll request you to come again on this show.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and all the best. I'm pretty sure the Iceberg Show is going to become very big very soon, and I'm always there to support you.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much, sir.